Students, in lesson 6.5, we are working on adding and subtracting fractions. All of the work that we did with estimating fractions, finding common denominators of fractions, and rewriting fractions into equivalent forms will help us be successful in adding and subtracting fractions. Our essential question is, how can you use a common denominator to add and subtract fractions that have unlike denominators? So we are going to connect. You can use what you have learned about common denominators to add or subtract fractions with unlike denominators. On the side in this green box, we have some things that are going to help us be successful in being ready to be able to solve this problem. So it says, first, we're going to underline the question we need to answer, and second, we're going to draw around a circle around the information that we will use. So let's start with Malia and her problem. Malia bought shell beads and glass beads to weave into designs in her baskets. She bought a 1/4 pound of shell beads and 3/8 pound of glass beads. How many pounds of beads did she buy? So right off the back, the question that we need to figure out is how many pounds of beads did she buy, and we are going to use the information that she bought 1/4 pound of shell beads and 3/8 pound of glass beads. So there are two strategies, boys and girls. This first strategy, we're going to multiply denominators to get a common denominator. And in the second strategy, which I like a lot better, we're going to use the least common multiple. So I'm going to be a little partial on that one and guiding you to use that one. So we're going to add a 1/4 plus 3/8, and we're going to write our answer in simplest form. One way we can find the common denominator by multiplying the denominators. So we would multiply those denominators. So 4 times 8 is 32, so that is our common denominator. However, boys and girls, that is not our least common denominator. We are going to use common denominators to write equivalent fractions with like denominators, and then we're going to add and write your answer in simplest form. So right off the back, boys and girls, we know that 4 times 8 is 32, and that means that we're going to have to multiply 1 by 8, and we get 8 over 32. Now, boys and girls, keep in mind, 8/32 is equivalent to 1/4, because when we multiply by 8/8, we're really multiplying by 1. Now we have to multiply by the opposite denominator. So 8 times 4 would give us 32. And now if we multiply the denominator by 4, we need to multiply the numerator by 4, which would give us 12 over 32. So now, boys and girls, keep in mind, 12 over 32 is equivalent to 3/8, because when you multiply by 4/4, you're really just multiplying by the fraction form of 1. So now we can add our fractions together. 8 over 32 plus 12 over 32 would give us, boys and girls, 20 over 32. However, 20 over 32 is not in simplest form. We would have to simplify that and reduce the fraction to 5/8. So you might say, well, Miss G, if my fraction is 20 over 32, how do I know that I have to simplify it? Do 20 and 32 have any common factors, boys and girls? Yes. 20 and 32 have 4 in common. Again, if we divide by 4 over 4, boys and girls, we're really dividing by the fraction form of 1. So 20 divided by 4 would give us 5, and 32 divided by 4 would give us 8. Now 5/8, boys and girls, is our final answer because it does not have any common factors besides 1 and 8. Now we're going to try our second strategy, which I think is much better for all of us to use, which is to follow and find the least common multiple. So remember, to find the least common multiple, you have to list the multiples. So I'm going to start to list my multiples on the side. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8, and I can stop there because I know that 8 times 1 is 8, and that's the first multiple of 8. If I look in both of my lists, boys and girls, the least common multiple is 8, so that is going to be our least common denominator. So right off the back, boys and girls, 3/8 already has 8 as the denominator, so we can simply just rewrite 3/8 because it's in the format that we need already. Now we think to ourselves, well, what do we multiply 4 by to get 8? we'd have to multiply by 2. So then if you multiply the denominator by 2, we must also by the numerator by 2. So 2 times 1 is 2. Now, boys and girls, keep in mind the least common multiple is 8. Yes, 32 is another multiple that we did in this first problem, but it is not the least common multiple. So now we can simply add here. We have 2/8 plus 3/8 gives us 5/8. And I really like this, boys and girls, because you can notice here, we didn't have to simplify. Over here in this strategy, we had to simplify. So I suggest listing the multiples to find the least common denominator. So boys and girls, we're going to go on to the next part where it says, explain whether you know your answer is reasonable. So what we can say is our original problem was 1/4 plus 3/8. Now boys and girls, 1/4 is really close to 0, and we're going to use our benchmarks of 0, half, and 1. 3/8, boys and girls, is pretty close to a half because 4/8 is equivalent to a half. So if you add that estimate together, 0 plus a half, we get the final answer of a half. So what we can do is to check to see, is our answer of 5/8 close to a half? Yes, we know that's true because 5/8 is really close to 4/8, which is an equivalent fraction of 1/2. So what we can say, boys and girls, is I can estimate the sum, and what we estimate the sum was to be 1 plus a half, which is equal to a half. Since a half or 4/8 is close to 5/8, we know that the answer is reasonable. So this is another way for us to practice what we did in lesson 6.3. Next, we're going to go on to when we do the same thing with subtracting fractions. We simply just subtract the numerators. So it says, when subtracting two fractions with unlike denominators, follow the same steps. So boys and girls, it's going to be the same steps that we use for adding two fractions. However, instead of adding fractions, subtract them. So right off the bat, boys and girls, we can look and see we have two denominators. Well, we know we want to find the least common denominator, so we're going to list our multiples. 5 times 1 is 5, first multiple. 5 times 2 is 10. Now I'm going to stop there, boys and girls, because I know 10 times 1 is 10. So when I analyze my list, boys and girls, I see that the least common multiple is 10. So that means the least common denominator is 10. So now we can see that 9/10 is already in that format. So we can simply just rewrite 9/10. Now, boys and girls, we need to change our other fraction. So what would we multiply 5 by to get 10, our new denominator? 2. 5 times 2 would be 10. Now if we multiply the denominator by 2, the numerator must be multiplied by 2, and you get 4. So now, boys and girls, we can subtract. We can do 9/10 minus 4/10, and what is that equal to? So 9/10 minus 4/10 would give us 5/10. However, we know that 5/10 isn't simplified. We can divide 2 out of the numerator and the denominator, which is another way of saying 1, and we get, oh, I'm sorry, boys and girls, not 2. It should be we divide 5 out of the numerator and the denominator. So 5 divided by 5 would give us 1, and 10 divided by 5 would give us 2. So in simplified form, it would be a half. So it says, describe the steps you took to solve the problem. First, I found a common denominator, 10. I used it to write equivalent fractions with like denominators. Then, I subtracted the fractions and simplified. Next, explain how you know whether your answer is reasonable. I can estimate the sum to be 0 plus a half, which is equal to half. Since 5/8 is close to a half, the estimate, I know my answer is reasonable.